Welcome to MCJ Report 160. Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Independent Media here tonight with your host, Morgan C. Jonas. I'd like to welcome everybody on board. Please go ahead and give the broadcast a share if you're here for the first time. Welcome to the show. It'll be a little bit different from what you're used to on the mainstream, but that's just what we do here. So we're going to kick off tonight's episode with some news and current events, and then we're going to talk about two subjects. So a little bit of a shorter episode for tonight. On the agenda for this evening, we're going to be talking about a new peer-reviewed study that was published by the Journal of Pediatrics in relation to mRNA vaccines and some lasting heart complications that have been observed in younger people, in teenagers. We're also going to talk about the terrible situation at hand in regards to Victorian farms going out of business. That's right. In 10 years between the year 2010 and 2020, approximately 10,000 Victorian farms, privately owned farms, have gone out of business. Yet, when we look at agricultural production, the growth has been steady year in, year out. So why do you think that's happening? Well, we're going to discuss that on tonight's show. Now, let's get started, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? All right, let's start smashing through the news. No, we're not starting there. Alrighty, so what do we have here? New dam proposal shelved for years despite major flood risks in Australian state report. That's right. So goes on to say here, thousands of homes could have been saved from major floods that swept through Queensland in early March had the government acted on a 2014 report to build additional defences against flooding. This is unfortunately very typical of the Australian government. We seldomly see forward planning. We seldomly see planning for the future in order to avoid these disasters. We know that if dams had have been constructed, that could have mitigated the risk in terms of these floods and also provided water security, perhaps for some agricultural interests that very much needed the water. So this is yet again just more and more proof that our government is not fit for purpose and needs to be replaced. All right, Australian Rugby League to get its first transgender player who is set to compete in the women's competition. Alrighty, so what this means, I think, is that an individual who was born a biological male who now has undergone some therapy, is now going to compete in the women's division. We're seeing this trend all throughout the world. We've actually seen some instances of injustice, I would call it, when biological women have missed out on attaining a first place position. We're seeing that in the swimming. So where do you think this is heading, ladies and gentlemen? Why do you think sports organizations around the world are doing this? What are they trying to achieve? And do you think this is being done in the name of equality, or do you think it's something else? All right, moving along here. NHS Trusts, this is in the UK, asks men if they are pregnant before having scans. I mean, how confusing is that? Look at this. Male cancer patients and those having x-rays face unfair and, quote, confusing questions after government removed the word female from guidance. And we saw a similar article in BBC the other day. Instead of using the term woman, BBC used the term assigned female at birth. This is all becoming really confusing, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not exactly sure where this is heading, but I can tell you that whilst our politicians are sitting around arguing about the use of gender terminology, there's nations out there that are sitting around the table talking about how can they gain the most expedient access to Australia's resources. Anyway, just saying. Moving along here. Denmark puts coronavirus anti-government extremism on terrorism list. Yeah, this is an emerging trend, and I think you can expect to see this around the world. There's been a lot of talk about this throughout the network known as the Strong Cities Network. We've seen these types of questions raised here in Australia as well. We see the emergence of further surveillance legislation that could potentially encroach into our private lives, under the guise of counter-terrorism, in relation to, say, anti-lockdown or people who oppose these mandates and COVID policies. So, yeah, if you oppose the government, that is supposedly the new terrorism, and I think it's quite likely that Australia will go in a similar direction to Denmark, which is very scary. Just imagine going to an anti-lockdown protest or organising an anti-lockdown protest and then getting charged with an act of terrorism, getting thrown in the same category as suicide bombers and people that enter public spaces with weapons, seeking to kill as many people as they can. What do you think, ladies and gentlemen? What's the real deal here? All right, moving along here. China seeks improved anti-epidemic approach, admitting lockdowns don't work. All right, so this was published by the Global Times in China, the state-run media, which actually was at odds with the official position of the government in relation to lockdowns, which is something you don't expect to see very often in China, as in the state-run media disagreeing with the government, because basically they're two of the same type of entity. But have a look at this. China has experienced nearly ceaseless struggles with combating the Chinese coronavirus since the pandemic began in the country late 2019. Most recently, Chinese authorities locked down Xi'an, a city of 13 million people. That's right. They're still doing these brutal lockdowns in China. 13 million people, lock them down. This whole lockdown model, you got to remember, where did it come from? Came from communist China. Where was this model exported to? The World Health Organization. Who adopted this model of brutal lockdowns? The World Health Organization member states. So I just want to remind you so you don't forget, where it came from. China going through it again. Unfortunately, we feel for the residents there. Empty supermarket shelves, people running around in face masks. You got some bloke here, I think, he looks like he's sleeping, but that's a security guard. And that right there is a gate locking people in their communities. So, they don't take any risks in China. They really, do things with an iron fist. And Daniel Andrews would love to do that too, make no mistake about it. All right, this is pretty funny right here. I mean, look at this guy. I mean, how is this guy the president of the United States? Photo shows Biden's Putin cheat sheet. That's right. The president's detractors have repeatedly questioned his mental fitness, and it makes sense. Joe Biden, if you've ever heard him speak, he's always losing his place. He's mumbling, he's stumbling, he's confused a lot of the time. Says here, after publicly appearing to call for the ouster of his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin. That's right. So Biden made a remark to the effect of Vladimir Putin cannot be the leader or should not be the leader. And some people interpreted that as a shift in American policy against Russia and perhaps a hint towards some type of intervention for regime change. Now, the Biden administration came out defending Joe Biden's statements and reiterating America's current stance on the situation, which is not one that is heading towards or suggesting regime change or anything like that. But Joe Biden, I mean, this is just a guy that's constantly putting his foot in his mouth, and I mean, he's the sort of guy you wouldn't want to take him to a party because you know he's just going to embarrass you. US President Joe Biden read from a pre-prepared cheat sheet on Monday in an attempt to assure reports that he wasn't actually suggesting regime change in Moscow. So this is pretty funny. There he is right there. Sleepy Joe Biden, just prop him up and make sure he doesn't fall down. All right, a bit of good news here. Look at this. We got a vaccine mandate for South Australian teachers and transport workers dropped. All right, so all the transport teachers and transport workers and teachers that held the line, good on you. It looks like things are paying off. But here in Victoria, Daniel Andrews is remaining staunch. Now, this comes at a time, obviously, after the South Australian election with the installation of a Labor Premier. So if they can do it in South Australia, why can't Daniel Andrews do it in Victoria? Daniel Andrews, I mean, this guy is just absolutely obsessed, isn't he? What's it going to take to stop this man? Daniel Andrews needs to be stopped. Hey, is Morgan calling for a regime change in Victoria? Well, I'm not going to answer that question, but I'll let you ponder on that at home. Alrighty, now, and some other good news here. Court rules Bald Hill wind farm turbines are too noisy. That's right. A victory for people that live in this region. Look at this. Gippsland wind farm operators have been ordered to stop loud noise created by wind turbines at night and to pay $260,000 in aggravated damages. Alrighty, so bit of justice there for the locals. We like to see it, don't we, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, now let's get this show started, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alright, so morgancjonas.com, that's right, my independent Senate campaign is well and truly underway. If you'd like to get on board with this campaign, it's morgancjonas.com. You can check out my policy positions, more to be released really soon. We're doing things differently. This is not your usual campaign. We are going independent. That is the way that we like it. So if you want a staunch freedom guy in office, I'm your guy. There's no one tapping me on the shoulder saying, Morgan, you can't say this or you can't do that. Nothing like that. My campaign for Senate is really just a political campaign version of MCJ Report. Independent, not compromised. We do things our way. All right, anyway, moving along here. What do we have? All right, study. Heart complications detected months after mRNA jab in patients younger than 18. All righty, now, social media, please do not censor me for what I'm about to say. This is a very, very legitimate study. Okay, this is not some sort of hokey-pokey website. This has been published here, the Journal of Pediatrics. Okay, so jpeds.com. Now, if you'd like me to send you a copy of this study, go to mcjreport.com, subscribe to my newsletter, and I'll send it out to you. All right, so these are the findings in a cohort of adolescents with post-COVID-19 mRNA vaccine myocarditis. So this is all in relation to heart-related complications in young people. There was a range of young teenagers who were admitted to this particular study. Now, this is a type of study that one would expect to review in a clinical trial. But of course, we know that clinical trials are ongoing, of course, for the COVID jabs. And when the FDA and the TGA here in Australia granted provisional approval for mRNA vaccines in ages 18 and younger, well, they did so without the existence of the study findings published in this study right here, this peer-reviewed study from the Journal of Pediatrics, which has strongly suggested, based on the findings, that heart complications in young teenage males, have persisted post mRNA injection for months and months on end. That's right. So we have the article right here from the Journal of Pediatrics. I'm going to read a little bit to you, and then I'm going to read a summary that was published by the Epoch Times, which has really put into layman's terms the findings of the study. So what do we have here? Myopericarditis has emerged as an important adverse event following COVID-19 mRNA vaccination, particularly in adolescents. Patients typically exhibit chest pain and an elevated serum troponin level in the days following COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. All right, so serum troponin refers to a protein that is produced from the heart when the heart has undergone some degree of distress. All right, so just moving down here, it says, little is known about the prognostic value or expected evolution of these CMR abnormalities associated with post-COVID-19 mRNA vaccine myopericarditis. Okay, so this is in relation to the functioning of the heart and the cardiovascular system. It says, in this case, we report the evolution of CMR imaging compared with initial acute phase CMR in our cohort of patients with myopericarditis post-COVID-19 mRNA vaccine. All right, so there's quite a few acronyms in here from a medical perspective. I'm going to read the summary for you now. If you'd like this study in its original form, and this is peer-reviewed, so you can see what their testing methods were, the intervals of the testing, how the study was able to determine these types of heart complications in these young people. Again, mcjreport.com. Go and put your email address in. I'll send it out to you. All right, so let's go to the summarized version here, and the editors at Epoch Times have done a good job. So, heart issues detected months after COVID-19 vaccination, study finds. And of course, we're referring to the Journal of Pediatrics. It says here, heart abnormalities were detected in some adolescents months after COVID-19 vaccination, according to a study. Researchers at Seattle's Children's Hospital reviewed cases of patients younger than 18 who went to hospital with chest pain and elevated serum troponin levels, two key markers of heart inflammation, within a week of getting a second dose of Pfizer's COVID-19 vaccine. All right, so within a week of the second dose, and complications persisting even after treatment months down the track. Goes on to say here, 16 patients performed 3 to 8 months after they were first examined showed 11 had persistent late gadolinium enhancement, which is a heart abnormality, though at lower levels than months earlier. Okay, so they were put on some medication therapies. So treating a side effect from a drug with more drugs. Goes on to say here, the follow-up imaging also revealed abnormal heart functions in 3/4 of the patients. Researchers said that while symptoms were transient and most patients appeared to respond to treatment, the study showed a persistence of abnormal findings, noting that late gadolinium enhancement, okay, these words are a bit new to me, so you have to excuse me, is known as an indicator of heart injury and is associated with a worse prognosis in patients with typical myocarditis. The findings raise concerns for potential longer-term effects. Now, this is a general concern that has been raised by the public upon the provisional approval of these particular injections, especially for young people, for people aged 18 and under. The concern raised was, well, what are the long-term effects? We really don't have any long-term data. Should the TGA be granting provisional approval given the absence of such data? Well, the data that people have been asking for is starting to emerge, and it's emerging through these types of studies. Anyway, I'll keep on reading here. It says the findings were published following peer review in the Journal of Pediatrics. The researchers said no funding was received for the paper. Goes on to say about 4 in 10 patients were still on exercise restrictions months after experiencing the inflammation. A parallel study with the patient's healthcare providers found. Providers also disclosed that cardiac imaging done months after symptoms appeared still showed abnormalities for some patients. All right, so I don't want to take this out of context, ladies and gentlemen. I'd much prefer that you read the study in its original published form so you can make up your own mind. Maybe you're a parent, or maybe you yourself are under the age of 18 and you're curious to understand what the study found. Go to mcjreport.com, put your email address in. I'll send this out tomorrow in an email. I'll also go ahead and publish this particular study on my Telegram, MCJ Report. So that's t.me/MCJ Report. And be informed. This is what informed consent is supposed to be. Weigh up the pros, weigh up the cons. Ask yourself the question, do the benefits outweigh the risks? Wouldn't it be nice if the government was to uphold the very essence of informed consent? But as you and I know, informed consent is, well, it's been chucked in the bin, at least by the Australian government. So anyway, moving along here, ladies and gentlemen. All right, Victorian farms are going out of business. Now, this is absolutely disgraceful. This is an issue that needs to be spoken about time and time again. And it's an issue that some people may not even be aware of. So I'm going to tell you what I'm talking about here. And this is a topic that I'm very passionate about. I think that we should all take an interest in our primary production, and we should all support our farmers and support our farmers staying in business. They are, after all, the people who feed us. All right, so this is coming from agriculture.vic.gov.au. Have a look at this. There were 21,700 farm businesses in Victoria in 2019 to 2020, accounting for 25% of farm businesses in Australia. Victoria's farm numbers have declined by 4% per annum in the past decade, falling from 32,400 in 2010 to 11 to 21,700 in 2019 to 2020. Okay, so what that marks is 10,000 farms out of business, gone in 10 years. So why do you think this is happening, ladies and gentlemen? Well, somebody may say, well, maybe our gross production has gone backwards, and that's what forced farmers out of business. Well, if you were to assume that, you'd be wrong. Let me show you something right here. Now, the data that you're looking at here is the year-to-year gross value of agricultural production in Victoria, okay? Now, this data is not that easy to get a hold of. It's available in the Australian Bureau of Statistics, but not in a table like this. I had to go and fish this data out myself. You can go and fact check me if you want. So this is just having a look at 7 years right here. So as you can see, 2013 to 14, $12.6 billion right there, increasing steadily over the years, arriving at 1920 at $17.8 billion. All right, so what does this mean? It means the agricultural farming industry is increasing in terms of gross production value, but the number of players in this industry is rapidly decreasing. All right, so what does that mean? That means more funds, more money, more capital circulating between a fewer amount of hands. So why are private, small to medium-sized Australian farming businesses going out of business? Let's take a little bit of a look here, shall we, ladies and gentlemen? Alrighty, so Victoria dairy farmers rekindle miners' protest and fly Eureka flag as they rebel against rising water prices. This is a big one. Water prices and availability of viable water. The government, of course, has politicized the very water that sits in the ground. We know that a growing volume of our water is now being acquired by foreign interests, and there's certain loopholes whereby people in office can own water rights without actually declaring their rights and are able to trade water back and forth like they're trading baseball cards or some type of some type of unproductive commodity. But of course, this is a productive commodity. It's life-giving, and the politics involved in water is forcing farmers out of business. So let's take a little bit of a look here at this article, and this was published 2 years ago. Dairy farmers have started flying the Eureka flag in a movement against high water prices, water fees, and low water allocations. All right, so some of this is due to pseudo-environmentalist government policy that has resulted in the severe restriction of water getting to the people who need it the most, which are, of course, our farmers. We need to put an end to this absolute garbage. These are the people that feed us. They're losing their businesses, and those businesses are being swallowed up by corporations. All right, we're going to talk about that in just a few moments. So, dairy farmers have started flying the Eureka flag. That was from 2 years ago. They say they've been taxed out of the system. Goes on to say about 400 dairy farms have closed in the past 4 years in the Goulburn Murray region. All right, so that's just one small region right there. As we said before, 10,000 farms in 10 years here in Victoria shut down, swallowed up by corporations. All right, so Russell Critchin is a retired farmer from the area and is helping to lead the campaign. All right, so that's him right there holding his Eureka flag and doing the right thing and standing up. Says here, last year we paid 100% of water and got only 66%. And that was coming from Jody Hay, a fifth-generation dairy farmer in Kohuna. Alrighty, so we've got some people in office claiming that they're helping out. We've got somebody here by the name of, he's a Shire Council manager, Roger Griffith, said that the Kahuna region had taken a hard hit because of the price of water. Well, yeah, I mean, anyone could have told you that. And one of his strategies is to so-called diversify the economy. Well, we're going to diversify the economy. We don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to do it, okay? Those are not the sort of answers we need. We need concrete action. All right, so where are these farms going? The industry gross production is increasing. The dollar value is increasing, but the players are reducing, meaning there's more production, more dollars circulating between fewer people. Cream of the crop. Look at this. 12 of the year's biggest farm deals in a year during which farmland values and commodity prices soared. Rich listers and fund managers joined wealthy farming families in chasing trophy assets. All right, this is coming from the end of last year, 2021. This year has been a bumper for big farm sales as some of the country's top landowners, including rich listers such as Gina Reinhardt, Andrew Forrest, and Sir Michael Hindsi, or however you pronounce his name. I mean, who really cares, right? Who really cares how his name's pronounced? I'm just saying. Bought and sold amid the best agricultural conditions seen in decades. A bargain for them, a tragedy for the farm owners who were forced into no other position than to sell up whatever land or cattle they had left. So when all these small businesses are going under, you've got these billionaires, these huge corporations buying the land up in a very predatory and opportunistic manner, and it's absolutely disgraceful. We should be taking all measures possible to ensure that our great family farming legacy is upheld and protected against commercial giants seeking to simply purchase assets that they can buy and sell like they're trading stocks. Also, we see creeping foreign ownership, not just here in Victoria, but all around Australia. Here's a little chart right here. We see Victoria with 5.6% of land currently owned by foreign interests. Might not sound like much, but this figure can balloon at any time, especially given the times we're living in and the lack of competency we have in our government. Just look at what happened in Tasmania, 26.2%. The Chinese Communist Party is just taking complete ownership of anything of value down in Tasmania. So it's very, very concerning. And it also doesn't help that, of course, for far too long, our homegrown farmers have been squeezed to the brink by Coles and Woolworths. That's right. So pushed to lower their prices, pushed in terms of water affordability, soaring energy prices, and it becomes easier to see why so many farms have gone out of business, especially in the past 10, 15 years, right? It makes sense for these huge corporate giants to gobble up these small family-owned farms and to put them under one big corporate umbrella, because they can afford to produce these types of agricultural products at a lower profit margin, right? They don't need such a big profit margin because the huge corporate giants are going for a quantity approach. So produce more, reduce the profit margin, and just sit back and let the profits come in to be shared among fewer hands at the end of the day. It's a very sort of large Chinese business style way of doing things. If you look at China, of course, their profit margin is very low, but their production output is massive. And we're seeing the same type of effect transpire with the farms in Victoria. Very, very sadly, I think this is traitorous. I think this is a tremendous betrayal of our great farmers here in Victoria and around Australia. It's a massive issue. It's not going away. I 100% support any measure or any means necessary to restore dignity to our farming industry. If you're from farming in Victoria and you've been affected by these government policies, send me an email at australia@morgancjonas.com and I'd love to hear your story. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this just about wraps up the show for this evening. Thank you for bearing with me. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather today, but hey, you got to just keep going in life. Is that fair enough? We used to have a mentality whereby if you were a little bit sick, it didn't matter. You just go to work and you do what you have to do. Now we're living in this time whereby somebody has a sniffle and all of a sudden they're enemy of the state. They need to stay at home for 2 weeks. In Australia, we used to have a saying. It went something to the effect of harden the fill in the blank up. And I think you know what I'm talking about. And that's what we need to do in this country. We need to harden up, right? If you're not feeling too well, it's like, well, poor you, just pour some concrete over your cereal. No big deal. Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for your time. Make sure that you check out my campaign website, morgancjonas.com, and I'll catch you on the next episode. God bless. Thank you for watching this video. If you'd like to support my independent campaign for the Senate, the best way you can do so is registering your details at morgancjonas.com and staying up to date with our movements.
Authorised by Morgan Charles Jonas, Independent for the Senate, Melbourne.